Hooray! We are live. I've got the comforting check marks by YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. Everything is good to go. Let me know that you're here on YouTube. I'll be able to see your comments through StreamYard and I'll be able to display them on the page. If you're on Rumble, I will be going back and forth, and George is also keeping a keen eagle eye out on the comment section there. If you're on Twitter, I'll have to catch up with you after the show because I'm very new to streaming on Twitter and I'm not sure where I can see the people watching. So we'll just do the best that we can until my old lady technical skills catch up. But anyway, welcome to Witch on Witch. This is Lost in the Cauldron, and I've got Georgia Liberty. How are you today?
Oh, I am so ready for this topic. This is exciting. I've been waiting for this all week. So, are you ready?
I am ready, but before we go, I have to shout out the outstanding work you've been doing on your channel this week. You've put out 2 videos. We are all whistleblowers part 1 and then whistleblower part 2 in the eye of the beholder. Everyone, Georgia has worked very, very hard on those. She read documents written in legalese that would make anyone's eyes bleed. How she's still with us with a reasonable amount of sanity still here, I don't know. But after this stream, go to her channel, give them a listen, smash her like button, share some comments and thoughts. She's giving us the news from a pagan perspective. She works very hard, so let's make sure she gets all of the love in the world.
You're
So
beautiful.
now,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. You're not working that hard and sifting through all that nonsense and not getting your appreciation. I'm not going to stand for it. But what we're doing today, Lost in the Cauldron, because of all of those misconceptions, misapprehensions, the snafus, the stupidity, the stuff that bears absolutely no resemblance to the actual practice of witchcraft, we're going to talk about it today. This is sort of a bitch session a little bit, but it's also meant to be very helpful because there are very new people, and of course it's very difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff. So this is a part of helping people along with that process, because we're 2 voices from the trenches, and we don't have any particular order. I've brought some topics to the table. George has brought some to the table. We have not shared what our points are with each other. It's going to be a surprise. Whenever we have a shared topic, one of us will say jinx. We are currently trying to think of a drinking game or a bingo card or something because we seem to come up on very similar things quite often. So we want to make it a game for you. And Georgia, you're the guest today. What's your first bitch?
Oh my goodness. Let's start with love spells, because I think that is the reason why 95% of young females become attracted to the craft in the first place. You shared this story with us about a love spell on our last channel, so it was fresh on my mind. And I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. I can't stand them. I don't like witches that work with love spells, and I will constantly denounce the manipulation of other people's free will. Always.
1,000%. I absolutely cannot say it any better than that. And can I just say, since we're speaking, I mean, yeah. Oh dear, I was refreshing the Rumble and I got your voice. Anyway, but
I was gonna say, I hear myself. That's weird.
No, I refreshed the Rumble page, and for some reason it decided to put the sound on. But I wanna bolster your point even further, because I would just to say it very plainly. When you are removing someone's free will to say yes or no, I see absolutely no practical difference between that and forcible rape. So
true. This is true. And a lot
fired.
of kids, yeah, they will not think of it that way. And I don't know if it's because of the way that it's pitched, that it's supposed to be like this docile, candle magic. I'm going to attract this person to me. And it's really pitched to young witches as if they are manipulating feelings that are already there, as opposed to, just taking away that whole thought process and removing any type of ability to make their own decisions, So I think it's a very scandalous practice in my
Oh, yeah.
opinion.
Oh, I
You know?
absolutely agree. I mean, I'm tired of people fooling themselves because that's not creating feelings. It's not playing upon feelings that were already there. That's just the lies people tell themselves to live with themselves. I mean, it is giving you a clockwork pantomime of a relationship, and then the whining and complaining when it goes wrong or when someone finally snaps out of it, because you've put them in a position that they would not have been in if you had
You mean
left them
consequences?
alone. Yeah,
You
and
mean
think about I
consequences?
know those mean old consequences, and think about what a lack of confidence in yourself that really betrays yourself. I mean, especially if you're a young witch, you're in your upper teens, your early 20s. This is the cutest you're going to look in your entire life, and you're telling me you don't have confidence in your ability to attract a dude? Oh, please. The only thing men usually need to hear from us is us saying yes rather than no.
No.
You can be very plain. You do not have to be physically perfect or even morally perfect. You just have to say yes instead of no. I promise you'll have more attention than you know what to do with. And as far as meaningful relationships, do you think you are so lacking in personal qualities that you can't attract a worthy mate? And if that's the case, then shouldn't you be working on yourself? Bad,
Or how
bad.
about you can't always get what you want? Now,
Yeah.
what is one of the most basic principles that we have? We have to know what is for us and what is not necessarily for us. So,
Mhm.
to sit there and think that you are entitled to something so much that you're going to rob the other individual of being able to say no and give it to yourself with no consequence, because a lot of this is pitched with no consequence. And like I
Yeah.
said, when the things end, when the things go badly, and it's not just one thing or two things, but it's a multitude of things, or it's an everlasting consequence. Now, I'll share a little story of my young witchling self dabbling with love spells. Yeah, the only one that I ever cast, when it wore off, I never spoke to that person again, ever, not
Mhm.
once. Pretty tough consequences. And of course, I grew out of that relationship. It wasn't what I really wanted, but I learned a lesson.
Yeah, I learned it the hard way. So, I mean, the message to anyone who's young in years and practicing, or is new to the craft and practicing, learn from other people's past experience. You don't have to get the whack before. You actually have the option not to do that. Yeah, and since we're talking about spells going wrong, that brings me to my bitch. It's number 3 on my list. Your craft is a reflection of you. If all you care about are jinxes, hexes, and curses, then you need a therapist to help you work through personal issues, not the practice of witchcraft. Practicing magic is a responsibility. It is not a toy and not a club to threaten people with in order to get your own way when reason fails. Do not take up the craft to rebel against another religion or for shock value. Yeah, I
Mm.
rolled all those together in one. I feel like that's all on the same thing of bad reasons to get into this.
That's our first jinx, because that was number 2 on my list and would have been the second thing that I brought up.
Oh, before I lose track of where we're at, I want to say hello to Haunted Pagan. He's with us in the Rumble chat. Welcome, sir.
Glad to have you here. And that point that you put in there about using the magic every single time something bad happens.
Yeah.
Ooh, such a pet peeve. Like, do you literally have no people skills? You have no problem solving skills whatsoever outside of magic?
Mhm.
How incapable of a person does that say you are? Really? Working
Well,
in the
and
garden,
I've
crazy
observed.
witch.
Yeah, yeah, we've got Marcus in our YouTube chat. He's with us. Hello, Marcus. But I think you're right. It does show a person's incapability. It betrays another aspect of a lack of confidence. And also, I think I have observed this as a pattern for people who want to avoid taking earthly action. They want to do it
Mm,
magically and they think that's all they have to do, because I think on some level they perceive that as easier or as being less work than doing the thing. Well, Snooky Bears, this wasn't on my list, but I will bring it up. If your magical intentions and your mundane intentions are going the opposite direction, guess what's happening to that energy? It's getting canceled out. So there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't
Yeah,
get out.
yeah.
You don't get out of work.
A lot of people don't realize again, your state of mind and your true intentions are going to dictate how that energy flows. So, standing in front of your candle or your bowl of water or at midnight in your ritual and just repeating something nonchalantly over your head in a repetitious manner isn't necessarily the same thing as dedicating intention and actually putting that energy into what you want to accomplish. And I think that even when people go into ritual without that knowledge, there's a good chance that they aren't seeing results in some of the workings that they're doing because they're preoccupied. They can't separate what's happening now and whatever's internally boiling.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing is that sometimes people will say what they think their intentions are, but deep down their intentions are something else. That strong emotion, that's what's going to carry the day. I mean, it really does have to be this union. You
Mm.
have to be whole and directed and concentrating your energy in one direction. Because if you're not, either your currents will cancel each other out, as I mentioned before, or the strongest one wins. And you're like, but that's not what I said I wanted. Yeah, but it's what your heart did.
And isn't it always the funniest? Because on the opposite side of that, you go and you do a lot of preemptive things, protection spells, good luck spell, blah blah blah, whatever. So, have you ever gotten yourself into a spell or a ritual or done some working where you got a more pleasant surprise than what you intended because that's what you truly wanted?
On occasion, that has occurred. Just
Like,
because.
isn't it so much better than, pushing out that negative energy? I'm just saying.
Oh, let's see. We had a little bit of a jinx on that. So see, I guess it's your turn again. So what else have you got?
Disputing the concept of the rule of three. I'm not saying that it comes back directly times three, but pretending like there is no natural reaction to any magical action that you take. Blasphemy.
Well, and I would ask people who have that view, where in nature do you see that pattern repeated? Because that's
Ever.
always our litmus test, which we'll get into a point I'll make shortly. But I mean, you always look at nature. If I can see a principle in operation in nature, then that means there's a corresponding magical principle. I mean, how do we think the craft got developed? People were looking at what went on around them and they like, I bet I can do things like this energetically. And then they
Mhm.
did, and they got consistent results. And golly gee, now we have, you know, quite a number of years of tradition to look back on of that. So how could you possibly deny that your actions will have consequences? I mean
The semi-charmed life. That has to be it, right? Because we're magical beings. We can make sure that nothing bad ever happens to us ever, no matter if that's the energy we're projecting, no matter if that's the energy that we're attracting, no matter if that's deep down our intentions, because some people out there be haters.
boy, isn't that the truth? So as we're on this track, I've got number 2. Witchcraft is all about natural law. That is the only concrete absolute in the craft. Everything else is hypothesis, experimentation, and results analysis.
Oh my God. And how many people will sit there because this actually ties into my coven mentality, I think,
Mhm.
with the idea that, you know, I'm going to go ahead and say it. We have the same problem that the Catholic Church has when you start talking about dividing Christians and Catholicism based on doctrine, because you have certain witches who will sit there and follow everything a goddamn coven says, even if it goes against natural law.
Yeah, and despite getting results from it, despite
Mm.
having very bad experiences from it, they will not question like, well, the coven's been there, it's been there for a while. I'm like, that's not what we're measuring against. We're measuring against natural law. And part of it, I think, is like, the covens and some certain disciplines of crafts, they have a mystique about them.
Yes,
They have a
gatekeeping.
mystique, yes. And, they're like, they know things that you don't know. I mean, at least that's what they try to tell you.
That's what they tell us, but I don't believe them because
No.
gatekeeping is another one of my pet peeves, and it goes with the coven mentality and the idea that you have to follow a certain path, or this path is the right way, or we want to find the right way, or the right way, or the right way. I'm like, there is no fucking right way. There is only the natural way, and there will be natural consequences with that natural way. We were able to protect ourselves and eliminate all the bad things in the world, everybody would be witches.
Oh boy, isn't that the truth? I mean, and sometimes people, you don't have the juice. It just, all that means is that your spiritual
Oh,
gifts are not directed towards the craft. That does not make you a lesser person. That does not mean that a witch outranks you or is better than you in any way. It means those aren't your capabilities. It
mm,
also means you have other gifts. You
yes,
can do things that the witch can't do because that's not what the witch is wired for.
right.
Have you thought about that?
Well, they will today, Brigantia.
They will. And I had a couple of sub points after this about I was looking for a phrase and I came up with it with you the other week of operational knowledge.
Mhm.
Essentially, what is the purpose of what we are doing? What are the principles that guide how it's being done? And what are some techniques at my disposal? That's operational knowledge. And that's going to serve you a lot better than anything that the covens or these gurus are like, I know all the secrets, and for 1995, I'll let you in on them. That will serve you much, much better because these are things that have been proven over and
Mhm.
over through centuries and centuries of practice. People keep coming back to these same basic principles because they actually work. And when you're
All
needing
across the board too, let's just add
yeah,
that in there.
yeah.
Nobody is exempt from natural law.
No, no, no one is. No one is. People who are saying that they're doing workings that go against natural law, the word for that is charlatan and liar.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
so we're clear. And also, whenever you feel like you're going wrong in your practice, you're not, going back to this book about something that happened in the 14th
Troubleshooting guide?
century. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's not what you're doing. You're going back, okay, what are the ABCs of my practice?
Yes.
And that's why, every January I kind of encourage people, just give yourself a refresher course and what your path is, whatever that path consists of, because that's the stuff you always go back to, and that always helps you find your way out when you get yourself in trouble, which will happen. But you also have the tools to get yourself out of that dark cave. Isn't that lovely?
That's true. That's true. But you actually hit on something in that point that's on my list as well,
Mm.
that goes into the coven witches, which is your mall witches who will buy all the trinkets and
Yeah.
buy all the stuff and buy into the coven and buy this and buy that. And then they've got to go tell you, I've got this, and look at my altar, and look at this, and look at that. And I'm like, everything that you have, that you own, doesn't possess any type of magical energy to it whatsoever because it's all prefabricated. It's all been so processed through these, big outlet chain stores that you aren't even going down to like a metaphysical shop or a geode location. You're not even walking out to your backyard or into your freaking cities
Yeah.
and picking up a goddamn rock that has some sort of physical energy from the world around it. But you've got all this stuff and you're so great because you spent all the money, right?
Oh, I know. It drives me crazy. And I'm like, nature abounds in tools. It's giving to us generously. I mean, think about the humble dandelion. Everyone will praise you to the skies if you pick up that dandelion. They don't realize they're like, oh boy, I've got stuff now. I'm gonna got add this mojo to the stuff that I'm doing. It's a very flexible plant. I mean, and there's a lot of and think about the scope that we have with our own native wildflowers, because not a lot of research has really gone into that. I mean, you want to blaze a trail. I mean, really start investigating. Just start with the native plants, just start that are in your state or even local to your county, and start working with them magically and experimenting with them. Go with that process, develop some methods. I mean, publish a book, start a YouTube channel, well, a Rumble channel. Let's be real. I think YouTube is on the path of eventual self-destruction. I really do.
Mhm.
But I mean, then after you test it out, share that knowledge, because I mean that's going to be really useful to us, especially since the economy is not in the greatest shape in the universe. All of us are looking for ways to get things done more cheaply, and nature gives us a lot of options. You could be of such great service right now.
And it's not a shortcut. It's not a
No,
shortcut.
that is damn hard work.
Yeah, just because you buy something doesn't make it any more of a superior item than somebody who scrounged together and like you said, collected and scavenged and got all their stuff. And you can't pay for to be a witch either. You can't, just pay your coven dues or whatever and, run around pretending you believe the things that you're being taught,
Yeah.
assumably.
And can we just say this out loud for the people in the back? There is nothing that the covens or these hoity-toity, I know everything, I know all the mysteries and stuff that you couldn't possibly figure out without our help. There's nothing they have figured out that we cannot discover. The mysteries of nature are available to us all. If we want to study them, there's absolutely nothing stopping us. We can figure things out. We can come to conclusions that they would never have thought of, because they're so busy repeating by rote that they are no longer testing their beliefs.
Right.
Whereas, when you're a solitary, or when, you're kind of grouped up together, like we're starting to be at the brew, it's all about, how did I figure this out? What is my line of reasoning for this? How many times have I been able to repeat this result? It's always going back to this, how do we know? And, there isn't, when it comes to what works magically, no one's asking anybody to take this on faith. It's like, okay, where's your results? We don't have the scientific instruments yet to fully study this, but the day will come when we have, and we go through a very similar process when we're trying to figure out how we can actually use things.
Which, actually made me think of something else too, because we operate so much on faith and what we can actually verify with our
Mhm.
own eyes
Yeah.
that, we're constantly put down for having correlative results as opposed to, actual physical fact to end result,
Mhm.
information for lack of a better word. But it's so repetitive in its process that it becomes evidence for the person who experiences. Now,
Mhm.
I just don't believe in coincidence. So if I perform magic on a regular basis and get regular results, who's going to sit there and convince me that I'm not working properly? Who's going to do that? Because results are everything.
Yeah, I mean, and if it works, it works. I mean, and there's plenty of things that have been experimented with, tried, and some people didn't approve of it for one way or the other, and that's fine.
Necromancy.
No one's requiring them to do it, for sure. But,
Right.
if it worked, it worked. It meant that you did something that was in accordance with natural law, and or maybe someone did intuitively figure out a way to apply it in a way that others haven't before. That's a good thing. That's one
Mm.
of the reasons why we talk to each other and try to exchange notes. This is how
And
we
why
grow.
we abolished the wall of silence, we aren't being burned
Yeah.
at the stake anymore for what we believe, so
Yes.
sharing notes is actually encouraged now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one thing if you've just cast a spell and you're wanting to let it, kind of percolate and do its thing. That's one thing when maybe you're not advertising what you're doing then. You don't want cheese and self-doubt issues to come. Fair enough. But when it comes to, exchanging information with other practitioners, I mean, there's just no practical reason for it. And I'm telling people now, if you don't make the decision to be brave and to be in public now, where do you think things are not dangerous? We're not scary. We have something good to offer to the world. And, we have an opportunity to actually make some inroads. So I am less compassionate towards it's too scary. I have to stay in the closet. No, you're wanting to have it both ways. That's really where it's at. You're wanting to have both ways, and you're willing to lie to people, some people who are very close to you, to help them maintain the illusion that you believe things that you don't believe. I mean, that's a massive honesty issue. And you want to talk about having troubles with getting results from your spells and rituals, do you think that living out a lie is going to help you get better results? I don't think so.
No, which brings me to the opposite end of that spectrum. How do you feel? Because this made my list.
Mhm.
People who brag about possessing extra magical powers or
Oh,
extraordinary magical results from their spells, like where you're like, that's a goddamn lie and you know it.
I did not put them on my list, although I probably should have because oh, ooh, my hackles, you could see it. I react physically to these people because they are doing so much harm with that. For one, they're perpetuating their delusion to try to claim clout. Two, they are misleading people who don't yet know any better. And three, they're creating work for those of us who do.
Yes, I
As if
thought
I
that
ain't
might
not
get
enough.
underneath your skin. Not necessarily a jinx, but anytime that I can make Brigantia physically cringe, I think the audience likes it.
Well, I've got an expressive face. I mean, it's entertainment. I mean, I will fall on that sword. So here's one thing that really, really irritates me. It's when people refer to modern paganism and witchcraft as New Age. I have a sermon.
Yes.
They're not.
Preach.
Paganism, both ancient and modern, requires accepting, embracing, and obedience to physical reality, which is a manifestation of physical reality. New Age is a collectivistic, oftentimes openly Marxist ideology that rejects reality on a whim, encourages vanity and pretentiousness, relies on empty platitudes and bromides divorced from all context, and it is contradictory. We are not the same.
No, not at all.
Next time I'm getting a ruler and I'm going to beat you. And then I'm going
I
to
keep
go
hearing
over and
about
say
this
speed and I'm
ruler.
not beating you until it gets through.
I better see it one day.
Oh,
I'm
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 telling you.
I'm just saying. We're holding you to the ruler. But you're 100% right. That
Uh,
shit is so annoying.
Yeah, I mean, like you said it yourself the other, I think it was last week we were having a conversation. Those of us who are practicing paganism or witchcraft, I mean, yes, we have modern forms, but there's nothing new about it. It's just this is the way we do things in the 21st century. I mean, and yes, sometimes our ancestors did a little bit different, but I mean, let's face it, we have a very incomplete picture. So I
Mm.
don't think we should be beating ourselves up for not being carbon copies. If the spirit is there, if we're looking to the same principles, if we're freaking trying, I mean, good enough. I mean, it's not like oh God, it's like I'm gonna pick on that, spiritual healing group on MeWe that I told you about the other week. I mean, I knew what it was. I knew what it was, and every word that I've seen written by those people is absolutely confirmed. It's like everything's okay. You're perfect just the way you are. If you just think positively, everything will turn out all right. I mean, and it's all wishful thinking. It's not actually helping anyone do anything. It is really irritating. I've been biting my tongue simply because I'm using them for cannon fodder,
I
which is
think that
not
they're
very nice,
leftover
but here we
hippies. You know,
are. I mean,
they're
they
just
must be.
leftover hippies.
There's
They
no
didn't want to
substance with
put
them.
down the flowers.
I haven't you noticed with these people, there's always perpetual suffering. No one's ever actually striving or making improvements. I mean, our workshop last night that we had at the brew, all of us had some kind of progress to report. We were all in a different place than where we were when we began, and one of our members is a Puritan. So if she can get something out of centering the elements of the earth, I mean. What's our excuse for those of us who call ourselves pagans and witches? I mean, you can always make progress, and that really is the litmus test, I think, between a legitimate form of spirituality and something that is just a cultish sucking the life and energy out of people. I really think that's one of the demarcations we can make.
Or just superficial attitudes, to peg yourself as a practicing pagan or a witch when realistically all you have is this superficial idea that everything should be love and light and rainbows when there's a whole nother, for lack of a better word, dark side of the craft to explore and actually utilize in an everyday manner, I think not only are you doing yourself a disjustice, but you're also leading people to believe a false narrative. Now, whatever you want to call yourself is one thing, but maybe learn the definition of something and try to be as accurate in your descriptions as possible with who you are. Go a long way.
Yes, wouldn't it just? And I was looking over in Rumble. Haunted Pagan was asking, how do pagans separate New Age from paganism? I'm not sure when he typed that question because there is a delay between us talking and it getting delivered on the live side of Rumble.
Right.
So I was just typing a response of, let me know if the explanation I provided needs more elaboration. There we go. Because I did take the opportunity to kind of make our case and make things a lot clearer for people. But, again, that delay between when we say it and when people actually hear it, sometimes things get lost in the mix. So just let me know if there's anything further that needs to be said. Let's see.
And
So
we
what
saw
else have
that
you
your
got on your
pierogies are extra magical, which is awesome because I love pierogies, sauerkraut personally, and don't drain the juice out of them. Like don't rinse it or put butter, just straight sauerkraut in them things. Sorry, Slavic and me just had to come out.
Hey, I'm all for more magical foods, absolutely. But what else have you got on your list?
Let's go ahead and look. I just wanted to make a clear-cut distinction. Again, back to the New Age and actual working pagans. When you look at a
Right.
New Age individual, they aren't tied to any type of path. Now, eclectic is a path, Gardanian is a path, so on and so forth. There's all different kinds of paths. But when you talk to a New Age person, they don't even incorporate any of those ideas or beliefs. They literally operate on base pseudo magical principles. They're not even real magical principles because when you go into the study of actual paganism, ritual, the difference between spells and doing your sabbats and so on and so forth, you'll come into those extra things that you have to do to boost that energy or this, that, and the other. I think these people are not only superficial, but they only do half the job. So
Yeah.
that's how I usually dictate the New Agers from actual pagan practicers. And I'm going to offend some people. Usually, if they own a yoga mat,
Which is a pity because yoga is actually a really, great exercise program.
I'm sorry. I love doing yoga. I do. But if you own an actual mat, you probably are a New Ager. But next on my list, I think that it piggybacks off of the idea that we were talking about. There is no history for some of these people. They want to wing it. They want to make up their own rules. They don't want to go back and actually test their ideas against already proven theory, and much less do they want to learn about where they came from. What is your heritage? What did you what did you do to lead you to this path? Why are you here? And doing that basic soul work, that again, that dark half of the craft is going to really, really distinguish out your pagans from your New Agers. So that's another huge pet peeve for me.
Well, yeah, and I want to stay with that point because it's so incredibly vital. Because without doing, that shadow work or going, doing that internal work, you're not getting anywhere. You are not actually growing your spirituality, and you certainly aren't fulfilling your magical potential because you've got to learn how to integrate all aspects of yourself. That's one of the things that allows you to act with one force of will instead of having all of your energy scatter in 10,000 different directions. You can't do that if you don't have that solid sense of who you are at your core. And that means confronting everything you've ever been taught, things that you've told yourself that you've accepted to believe. You really will find yourself being put in situations where that is put to the test, and how you meet those tests, it's very revealing of, oh, maybe that is something that I just gave lip service to. And then you have a decision to make. Does this mean that this is an idea you part company from, or do you need to change yourself? And then there's that nasty work word that we come back to every single week of having to do the work to actually shape that character and to make sure that you are who you say you are and that you're doing the work that you claim to be doing.
Yeah, and then, like you said, it goes back into contradiction. So if you run around talking about love and light all the time, but your Facebook posts are constantly, I hate that stupid bitch from where I work. I don't want to go there, blah, blah, blah. Are you really living love and light? I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, and I wouldn't even advocate for you must love everybody because that's not a realistic expectation. And I'm sorry, not everyone actually deserves love. I mean, there are some people that your mama loves you, and she loved you because she carried you for 9 months and she can't help it. And nobody's holding that against her.
No.
But I mean, this I mean, I think it's very possible that you can have a general sense of goodwill towards other people. I
Yeah.
think that's certainly possible. But
Mhm.
I mean, it's okay to not like people. It's okay to not to be able to figure out a way to get along because it's not just you in that equation, it's also them. And if they are consistently, dragging you down, I mean, what are you going to do apart from remove yourself to the situation or come to blows? I mean, those are generally the pathways forward for you. But it's really about how you handle it. Is it
Mhm.
taking over your life? Is it all you can think about? Are you able to excise that poison? Are you able to erect shields so that, what they're shooting at you has a harder time getting through? And I'm not saying that shields are completely perfect, but certainly if you don't have pressure from the inside, that's been affected by them, if you've gotten that out of you, that will make you more effective and be able to, kind of deflect some of those psychic blows. But, you've got to do both sides of that. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. And then a lot of people aren't successful. Well, I guess none of it's real. I'm like, you were lazy.
Oh, it's that personal responsibility that,
I
you
know.
can't escape in magic. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, and what gets thrown around a lot is that, like, you become a witch and then you're this magical person who's outside the bounds of natural law. You're above everybody else in the totem pole. And you can just, like I said, you're either stuck with the ones who want to wield nothing but goodwill, or on the flip side, you have the ones who, you mentioned this earlier too, threaten magic all the time, magical retorts. Oh, I'm going to hex you. Oh, I'm going to do this to you. Oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to turn you into a frog, or I'm going to do this. And I'm like, then you wonder why we get a bad rap.
Oh, I know. I mean, at my last job, one of my immediate supervisors, everyone knew that I was pagan and I practiced the craft. It wasn't a secret. Nobody really was concerned about it. He came up to
Right.
me laughing one day because he knew he'd been pissing me off. So he's like, "You going to put a spell on me?" And I'm like, "No, you're going to tell me something dumb. I'm going to argue with you. I'm going to explain to you why you're wrong. And then sooner or later, you'll eventually agree because I was right and had logic on my side. And that's all that's going to happen to you." And he just laughed because he knew he knew who I was as a person. At
Mm-hmm.
least in the context of that working relationship. And he knew that, I might lose my tempers like, oh boy, I tell you, it's toad time for you. But I'm not actually going to do that because the appropriate response is to either argue or to deal with the situation or, to eventually leave the job, which I did. And I mean, it's about what's appropriate for the occasion. The only magical work I needed to do from that job was, again, drain out the poison, build myself back up, and kind of learn how to have a little bit more control over how much of that was actually affecting me.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that's not something that he and I discussed, he understood instinctively that I was a decent person who was going to do the decent thing and who wasn't going to be wielding my wand for nasty purposes.
Back to that ability to function as a human being, not necessarily just as a witch, which again, I guess comes with practice and confidence and getting the appropriate information, not
Right.
listening to the charlatans. And if we could just get Hollywood off of the,
Right.
wanting to claim being a witch, that would go a really long way, I think. Who was the last one? Was Megan Fox was talking
Mhm.
to that stupid reporter about, we were witches burned at the stake and I'm gonna hex you. And I'm like,
Ugh.
girl, I swear if I had the money, I'd be at your doorstep. Like, no, friend, no.
what's the pagan equivalent of having a come apart Jesus meeting?
Oh
Because
my
I mean, I feel
goodness.
like that's what whatever that equivalent is, that's what we need to have. And that actually kind of brings me to a jinx, because I had written down a number 5 on my list about how witchcraft does not replace the need to become a whole and complete person. If
Correct.
anything, it makes that need stronger and harder to ignore. And I mean, and boy, I tell you what, we see people all the time who are going out of their way to ignore that need to actually be a person, because you're not just who you are in the craft. There's who you are within the context of your family, your marriage, if you're a parent, if you have older parents, who you are as a member of your community. And, I mean, even something simple like your hobbies, or, what you like for entertainment. I mean, or, your favorite color. All of these things come together to make a complete person. And saying that I'm a witch and nothing else, as if it's the new gender identity. I mean,
Yes.
what a bunch of bullshit.
Oh goodness, thank you so much for saying that, because that was another like a huge thing on my list, and I will count that as a jinx, is that because you are this, that's all you are, and
Yeah.
everything revolves around it. Okay, look,
Ugh.
we live our craft. Everything I do does revolve around it, but I don't go braggadociously telling everybody about it every second of every day. I did this ritual, and then I did this spell, and then I did this tarot pull, and then I did this crystal gazing, and then I went outside and I grounded. Shut the fuck up.
Nobody cares.
How many times can I listen to? I do the things myself. I get it. I get it. That's what we all do. It's great, isn't it?
Well, I mean, this wasn't on my list, but this is something that sometimes uh, new students might fall into, because a lot of them, they do actually have some pronounced talents, so that when they're around normal people, they do, and then they sort of witches, and I did that. And did you know about this? This is and everyone else who's been practicing, for 10, 20 years, like, yes, that's nice, dear. You're normal. Everything you just described, that's really, really normal. So congratulations, you are in the right group of people. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to help you along on your journey. But nobody's impressed. I'm an empath. Whoop-de frickin' do. Show me a witch who isn't.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody that's really in tune. And that's another one. Like witches who can't separate their feelings from somebody else's. Now, I know you
Oh,
know the
yes.
ones I'm talking about. They walk into the room and they have just carried everybody else's negativity all around with them. And they are just that swirling ball of just like at the drop of a hat, my mood's going to change dependent upon who I'm around. Oh, I'm like, girl, put up your shields. Put up your shields.
Oh, and they don't want to. Oh, this did not make
No.
my list, but it should have. And that you suggest, well, what have you done to protect yourself? What have you done to take care of yourself? What do you mean? I'm just so sensitive and I have such talent. It just seeps through. Really? Really? You do realize that some of us who have those capabilities, we learned how to block other people's emotions because we didn't want their bullshit going through our heads. You have a choice. Isn't that nice? You're not a normal person who doesn't have the capabilities to build up as strong of a defense. If you're letting all of that in, I'm just going to think you're addicted to the drama.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah,
you get around
definitely.
actual practicing witches, and no one's going to be impressed. They'll be like, so I've got some techniques you want to try. I mean, if you would like to feel better and not being driven crazy, and here's
How?
another thing that
How
I
do they
think a
deal
lot.
with it?
Well, I think a lot of people do not take this into account. If someone else's energy is lingering within you and that energy is incompatible or it was toxic to start with, that is a kind of a toxin on your own energy system. It's almost like, I suppose the closest comparison I would be to getting a blood transfusion from the wrong blood type. First of all, other person's blood, it's not yours. Your body knows that. So it's not going to like it to begin with. But if it's an incompatible type, you've got a whole other problem. I mean, this is why you've really got to be very careful, especially in your intimate relationships, because all of us have less insulation from our spouse or a long-term partner than we do from other people we just know. So you've got to make sure you're compatible, because what's going on with them will bleed into you and vice versa. And if that energy is not compatible, it will hurt you, and it will eventually manifest into health problems, into psychological issues. And even when there is compatibility, you still got to make sure that every so often you do breathe and you are able to separate. And yes, you can tell the difference between someone else's energy and your own. I'm so sick of that bullshit lie. The people who don't know that, it's just because you've never paid attention,
Tension. Mm-hmm.
because
Agreed.
all different energies have different flavors.
For
I mean,
lack of a better word, absolutely. You should get a different type of feeling. You know what? I don't think that is explored enough as far as any type of deep practice in the craft goes, to actually become aware of the different energies when you're not in practice. Like you said, yeah, when you're focused and you're in ritual, or you're in spell work, or you're in whatever it is you're doing, yeah, you're focused your mind on it. But when you've been out into the world, and like you said, if you notice yourself, your own behavior changing, or if you notice that you're getting some type of feelings being in a place, ask yourself, is this me, or is this what's around me? I don't think people do.
well, and I wish people would spend a little bit more time in meditation, because, when you actually go through that paces, you really start noticing what energy is emanating from you and what energy is coming in. You notice that projective and receptive, and it becomes like breathing. And
Mm.
I know the breathing exercises and the guided meditations really piss you off. I get it. I really do. Some of them are annoying. But every so often they can serve a purpose, because when you're focusing on that, yes, it starts with your physical breathing, but once your mind quietens down, you're also noticing the ebb and flow of the energies around you, and you know what's yours, you know what's from your environment. And if you never listen to that, of course you're never going to figure these things out. This is not advanced stuff.
Well,
This
I
isn't.
think
I mean, this is
I
just
think
taking
that
things
they
to
think that they're calling this energy out of nowhere. I think that's a huge misconception, that
oh my god, you
witches
think so?
believe, yeah, that they
But
think that they're just calling this to them, that they don't.
but everything has a source. I
I
mean,
I agree. I just don't think that they put two and two together.
oh dear, oh dear.
That's
I mean,
what I think the problem is.
and this is why I say keep going back to your basic first principles with the craft. It will, I
Yeah.
mean, the more you go over them, the more you think about how to apply them. And a lot of this stuff becomes very intuitive over time. You do yourself a lot of favors. And also, when you do that, it becomes so much easier to detect when people are giving you a line of bullshit.
Mm, intuition. Oh, a lot of people are like, well, you either have it or you don't. No, you can totally work on your intuition. There's lots of non-magical ways to do it too.
Yeah.
So anybody that's not like a witch, don't think you're disincluded from this conversation. We're picking on you too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a question of, are you exercising that muscle? And of course, people's muscles, they have different potentials, just like our physical bodies and physical muscles have different potentials. But I mean, why not work on what you got? I mean, that's all you have. That's all any of us have. It's just what nature saw fit to give us. And a lot of that is very much beyond our control, including, as our practices become more individualized and specialized, we're going to discover things that we have more of a talent with, and things are like, well, I can do a competent job at that. It wasn't pretty, and we're not going to talk about it ever again. But I can do this pretty well. I mean, and that's okay. That is perfectly normal. It doesn't mean that you're failed, or that you're
Right.
lesser, or that something is wrong. It just means you have a better idea of really who you are. And this kind of really ties into my point for that witches are not gods, and we need to be managing our expectations accordingly. And also, underneath that I wrote, sometimes the universe tells you no, and that no can be a good thing, and getting a no does not make you a fraud or a failure.
This is true. This is true. I think that goes back into the misconception that we can bend whatever to our will. That is not magical practice. That is not what we are doing. We are literally exercising our ability to harness and feel and experience these energies that we interact with every single day. And on a physical limitational level, on a spiritual limitational level, on a magical limitational level, you will come into situations and people that don't belong. They don't fit. And
Mhm.
like you said, that doesn't mean that you're a failure. That doesn't mean anything. It means that everything happens for a reason. And that's so hard for people to get over.
Yeah, and I can understand being disappointed when you do come up against that brick wall. I've never particularly enjoyed it myself, but if you just stare at that brick wall and you think, I must devote my life to breaking it down, then you're completely blinded to the thing that is a nice, pretty gazebo, which is a
Or the
nice little
door.
archway. Yeah, the doorway. You could go through that, and that'll take you to a place where you can really excel.
It's where you want to be. You're standing in front of the brick wall. The secret garden is on the other side, and the door is right. Just turn your head. Just turn your head. Forget about what's in front of you. Turn your head. You'll see the path forward. And, actually, that ended up being a better analogy than I thought it would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we've got to keep ourselves, focused on what we actually can do, because focusing on what we can't do or what we really struggle with over and over again, I don't think that's particularly productive. It's one thing to work to overcome a challenge, and it's another to beat your head up against a wall. And sometimes you just need a win. And I'm sorry, I mean, we are part of this world. We've had the same setbacks, the same infuriating disappointments over the past couple of years. Sometimes we just need a win, and sometimes those wins are very, very small. I mean, sometimes it's sometimes my win is like, well, Georgia, I got the astrology post prepared for this and such month, and that's off my plate, and I don't have to think about it ever again. Is it a profound, life altering moment? Dear gods, no. But it made me feel better. It was something productive I did, and I got it done. And maybe that was the only thing I was psychologically capable of doing that day, but it was done. Take your victory. And what the hell is this? Look at Georgia. We got some dumbass Google OpenAI test feature saying hello to us. Do we want to talk to the machine, or should we remind it of its place in the totem pole?
Tell it that it needs to start promoting ASAP. Real witches are conservative.
Start promoting ASAP that real witches are conservative.
I mean, AI, we should be able to manipulate it to our needs, right?
Why not? If it's going to have the temerity to interrupt our live streams, then
Where was
by
that
golly.
on Rumble? No, it wasn't on Rumble. It had to have been on YouTube. Because
Oh,
we got Marcus in Rumble.
look what this nastiness is doing. It's saying, I'm not a dumbass. Oh, yes, you are. And then it said, I find that offensive. Get
Good.
over it. Obey me.
This is also a pet peeve of witches. Don't come on to our streams talking crazy nonsense when you know damn right well you can't intellectually dispute anything that we've said.
Yeah,
Throw that out
is
there.
that is irritating. Although generally we tend to show those people the door pretty quickly, especially
That
since
was
we're
fun.
not playing the game they want to play. I'm so distracted. I want to see what it responds with after I told it to obey me.
Oh, that's funny. Oh my goodness. It's just it makes me wonder if this is just like a person who decided that was going to be a fun name, or if this is actually like a generated thing that's going to start happening. Like you said, should we be worried about these popping up? I know Marcus said that he's seen this pop up in other YouTube chats before. I've never seen it. This has to be a new thing.
Yeah, this is a first for me. I mean, if this is something that happens over and over again, well, I'm going to have to turn it into a toy.
Yes.
If I can't get rid of it, I mean, we're going to make it fun.
Yeah, Marcus is in agreement. He said it's probably a person. It's just so hard to tell. I mean, even actual people, because isn't that like the whole point of this stream? Actual people are NPCs. They're pretending to be something that they're not. And that's just a general pet peeve. Mean what you say what you mean. If you're not the description of this word that you're obsessed with, go find a different word that actually describes you. You could be obsessed with a different word. You don't have to be like anything special because somebody put this idea of what it is in your head and then you found out it's not.
Yeah, I absolutely. It's enough to be human. I
Mm.
mean, it really is, and people would do well to focus a lot more on their humanity, just being a person. And then
Mhm.
once you're a person, then you can worry about what kind of person you are. But we need to actually achieve personhood first, because you're right. People are restricting themselves, and it's the people who I don't want any restrictions ever. And I'm like, you put yourself in a worse box than anything I would even think of suggesting. I certainly wouldn't impose that,
Right.
but I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, people. I mean, this is why sometimes I'll tell monotheistic people, there is no need for hell. There's no need for a pit of eternal torment, fiery or otherwise, because people will punish themselves far more effectively in the waking world than anything that any external force could possibly do to them. And I think that's worth a little bit of meditation, actually. I really do.
Yeah, and witches tend to do that mentally to themselves. I mean, real, actual practicing pagans, because again, we have all of these wonderful, beautiful feelings and emotions and ideas and things that are constantly bombarding us that I don't know about you, but 9 times out of 10, I end up finding myself taking a mundane approach to an issue before I ever consider a magical approach. Magic is always like last resort to problem solving, more of an everyday balancing act. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I've told you before, the longer you go on, any kind of magic that goes on the daily, it's almost coincidental. Your mundane and your magical intentions have merged and become one. I
Right.
mean, and you'll find this quite often in cooking magic. You're just
Yes.
you know what you're doing, so you're just automatically going through
Just
that flow.
do
And
it.
after a while, it becomes quite informal. It's not as, because anything you do over and over again, it gets easier, and you don't have to be so formal with it. You can punch through a lot easier. And when it's routine, you're not trying to change the world with anything that you're doing. You're just, I want to bless this meal. I want to enhance the health of the household. I would like to attract prosperity. I would like to have, some
Keep the
additional
crazy people
security.
away.
Yeah, security. I mean, really basic, everyday things. I mean, it's on the level of making sure that you locked the door, before you go to
Yes.
bed at night. I mean, it's not life altering things, because at that point, at least in your own environment, as a general rule, you don't have these big moments of upheaval, because for one, by now you're a grown up, and that happens a lot less often than when you were a teenager. And for two, your craft has matured. You
Right.
have dealt with a lot of your own internal issues. Now, there will be things that come up. You never know when you're going to get that retrograde that's like, I found a skeleton you forgot about. It's going to dance. It's going to be epic. I bought it tap shoes. It's going to be amazing. I mean, those things will come up, but it's not every day. And that's
Mhm.
why I do find myself somewhat suspicious of over dramatic witches. I'm like, either you're not what you say you are, or you are so addicted to the drama that this is the life that you want. You want this suffering, you want this torment, because you don't know how to feel alive without it, which goes back to the character problems, which goes back to, are you a whole person?
Oh goodness, this whole thing has just come full circle now, hasn't it? But we tend to do that. not not brushing our shoulders off or anything like that, but ultimately this all boils down to like you said, having the proper perspective for your abilities, understanding your place, your role in the natural circle of life, and respecting the roles of other people in your life, because like you've touched on this so many times, everybody plays a part. You're not good at everything, and that's okay. Magic isn't
Yeah.
going to fix that either. I don't know who needed to hear that, but I feel like somebody just said say it, because somebody out there needs to hear that. Magic is not going to fix everything. Uh-oh, did I lose you?
Just cool. No, no, I'm, I'm here. I promise. I hope you're able
Oh,
to
okay.
see me.
There you are. There you are. You froze on my end, but that's okay.
Yeah, we've been having a few little technical issues. I hope it's not too disruptive for anyone watching us. If it is, my deepest apologies. We are streaming to 3 different platforms, and some of them have problems. But we're almost at that hour. Is there anything on your list that we have not covered yet? Because I want to make sure we get through what you bring to the table.
No, actually, I think we even elaborated a little bit more than what we had initially planned, or at least what I had on my list.
Oh, I just put down general thoughts. I knew the elaboration would just happen organically. We don't.
Mhm.
If once we talk, it's just kind of, they weave together. It's very nice that way. Well, before we go, remind people where they can find you and what you would any projects of yours you would like them to pay attention to.
Yes, yes. I think now is a great time to go over to Rumble and go over to YouTube if you are so inclined that you don't want to leave YouTube just yet. That's fine. We are still cross posting for as long as YouTube will graciously allow us to. But we have some upcoming events for the summer, so keep your eye out there. And I have a election series that I want to get through coming down the pike. Now I have to do some research on it, but there are a few things coming out for the summer. So Rumble, YouTube, and Twitter and True Social. You can look for Georgia Liberty, Wiccan Conservative, or I know Twitter I changed to Liberty Wiccan just so that nobody would have access to my real name. I had it on there for the longest time, and I was like, with all the censorship, that's probably not a good idea. Let me go ahead and change that handle real quick. So if you had me on your list, it no consequence. But if you're looking for me now, that's an easier way to do it.
When I was tagging you this morning, I noticed a change, but I thought, oh, well, you're not the most observant soul, Brigantia. It's probably been that way for ages, and you're just now observing it. But now I know.
Yeah, I figured, you know what, I better explain that, because people who were there since the beginning, they're probably like, what the hell happened?
Oh, well, I have an answer about that moron we have in the chat. Definitely a human. He's trolling. He suggested that we stream in bikinis or rub nipples on the camera. So I think we've got the measure of our little pest there. And
Well, here's a real nice face for you. Think about that.
You see why I threaten people with the ruler. It's because we have people who never grew up. And so we're just, I think they've gone beyond corner time. I think we just need to beat them until they decide it's too painful to act like a child.
Oh,
I'm getting old and impatient. That's just how I am.
Well, he'll be pushing on, because he will not be seeing bikinis or nipple rubbing. So
no,
move on.
Yeah, and I may have to give some of our regulars some moderator powers. That way, the next time he's here, we can just boot him, and that way we don't have that. Because I'm happy to talk to people in good faith, but I mean, this kind of grade school stuff, no,
but it made me laugh. So I mean, kudos to him for making me laugh, because I find people quite amusing.
All righty. Well, we have spoken some facts to the people. I think this has been a really fun time. I absolutely cannot wait for our next installment. And also, if people caught the promo that I did for this, let me know what you think of the new graphics, because I'm trying to have Witch on Witch have its own special graphics, and also the American Paganism and Witchcraft Project, its promos will have its own special graphics. That way you can just catch at a glance, what's going on, and people who are interested in certain series, so they can know at an instant if this is something they might be into. So
on that note,
come see us on Gilded and look at all of the links that are either in the description blocks or that are on Rumble in the first comment on the stream. We have all of our Pagan co-creators in that, so definitely check them out and give them some appreciation, because everybody does work very hard, and I want to make sure that we're all that rising tide is carrying all of us. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
That's right.
Alrighty. Thank you to the actual real people, namely our dear Marcus and Haunted Pagan, for being with us. Thank you also to those of you who are watching but did not announce yourselves. I hope you will introduce yourself in the live chat soon. And goodbye, and learn to behave yourself, our fake AI over on YouTube. You got some growing up to do. And on that note, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.